Today, the United States is one of the most powerful nations on Earth. It dominates global politics, leads in technology, boasts the world's largest economy, and possesses one of the strongest militaries ever assembled. But have you ever wondered, how did America become America? Who first reached this land from Europe? Why were European explorers desperately searching for a new route across the ocean? And did Christopher Columbus really discover America? The real story is far more fascinating and far more complicated than what most history books tell us. Let's travel back more than 500 years to uncover the incredible chain of events that changed human history forever. To understand America's story, we first need to understand Europe's greatest challenge during the 15th century. Back then, Europe desperately depended on Asia. Luxury goods such as black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, silk, porcelain, precious gems, and exotic spices came almost entirely from Asia. These products weren't just expensive, they were symbols of wealth and power. But in 1453, history changed dramatically. The mighty Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople, the gateway between Europe and Asia. Today, we know this city as Istanbul. This single event transformed world trade. The Ottoman rulers gained control over many of the traditional land routes connecting Europe to Asia. Trade didn't completely stop, but it became far more expensive and difficult. European merchants often had to pay higher taxes and rely on middlemen to obtain Asian goods. As a result, Europe's kingdoms began searching for something revolutionary, a direct sea route to Asia. Whoever found it first would become unimaginably rich. That race would ultimately change the entire world. This period became known as the Age of Exploration. European kingdoms invested enormous amounts of money into building stronger ships, creating better navigation tools, and training skilled sailors capable of crossing oceans that most people feared. Two countries quickly emerged as the leaders of this race: Portugal and Spain. Portugal focused on sailing around Africa, hoping to reach India from the east. Spain decided to take a far riskier gamble. Instead of sailing around Africa, if Earth was round, surely Asia could also be reached by crossing the Atlantic Ocean. It was a bold idea. Many believed it was impossible. One man believed otherwise. That man was Christopher Columbus, an Italian navigator. For years, Columbus tried convincing European kings to fund his expedition. Most rejected him. They thought his calculations were dangerously wrong. Finally, Spain's monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, agreed to support his mission. Find a western sea route to India and establish direct trade with Asia. In August 1492, Columbus departed Spain with three famous ships: Santa Maria, Pinta, and Nina. No one aboard knew exactly what awaited them. For weeks, they saw nothing but endless ocean. The crew became terrified. Food supplies dwindled. Some sailors even considered mutiny, believing they would never see land again. Then, on October 12, 1492, someone spotted land. Cheers erupted across the ships. Columbus believed he had finally reached Asia, but he hadn't. Instead of India, Columbus had arrived in the Caribbean, likely on an island in today's Bahamas. He never realized he had encountered an entirely different continent. Believing he had reached the Indies, Columbus called the local inhabitants Indians. That mistaken name survived for centuries. But here's something extremely important that many people misunderstand. It is not historically accurate to say that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Why? Because millions of indigenous people had already lived across North and South America for thousands of years. Advanced civilizations such as the Maya, Aztec, and Inca had built magnificent cities, developed complex calendars, practiced agriculture, and created thriving societies long before any European arrived. In fact, archaeological evidence also suggests that Norse explorer Leif Erikson reached parts of North America nearly 500 years before Columbus, although his settlement did not lead to lasting European expansion. So, rather than saying Columbus discovered America, historians today generally describe his voyage as the event that initiated sustained European exploration and colonization of the Americas. That distinction is much more accurate. Columbus spent months exploring islands throughout the Caribbean. He searched tirelessly for what Europeans believed India contained: mountains of spices, gold, silver, precious stones. But none of those riches appeared in the quantities he expected. He wasn't in India at all. Yet he never fully accepted that. Even after multiple voyages across the Atlantic, Columbus remained convinced he had reached islands near Asia. Ironically, he died without realizing that his voyages had introduced Europeans to continents they had never truly understood before. If Columbus didn't know he had found a new continent, then why isn't the continent called Columbia? The answer lies with another Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci. Unlike Columbus, Vespucci carefully studied the lands being explored and argued that they were not part of Asia. Instead, they were an entirely new world. His observations convinced many European scholars. In 1507, German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller published a world map that labeled the newly recognized continent America, after the Latin form of Amerigo's first name. The name remained, and eventually became known across the world. Although Columbus never reached the Asian markets he was searching for, his voyage permanently reshaped world history. It connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas in ways never seen before. Trade expanded across oceans. New crops, animals, technologies, and diseases moved between continents in what historians call the Columbian Exchange. European empires rushed to claim land. Powerful indigenous civilizations faced devastating conflict, disease, and conquest. And over the next few centuries, the foundations of what would eventually become the United States of America began to take shape. But this was only the beginning.